Well, hello everyone and welcome again to Painless Universal, conversation with myself and Welsh. I am super delighted to welcome you to this show constantly, and I hope this show is helping you improve your life. Our conversation are for you. It's for you to listen and find topics that are relevant to you and see how someone else has done it and how that could help you improve your own life and make your day just that pain-free day that you desperately need for. My guest today is an amazing woman, and we'll be talking to her about our greatest potential. Where does that all come from? We all have this hidden ability within ourselves to find our strengths, to do things that are bigger than us, but sometimes we don't know where our potential lies. My guest will be discussing that. Her name is Kristina Lakhiani. She will be talking to us about her own journey, her personal journey, and how that led her to the path where she is today, to be a transformational speaker, helping others. Let me tell you a little bit about my guest. My guest, Kristina, is an entrepreneur. She's a speaker, philanthropist, partner, and mother. She's been engaging in the personal transformational industry for over 15 years, collaborating with and playing with leading thinkers and teachers in conscious relationship, human performance, and life optimization. She started her career in Estonia, where she was born and raised. She's worked for various organizations such as United Nations, the governmental organization of her country. So before she started on this path, so we'll be asking her, why did she decide to go on this journey? What was going on in her own life? What was truly missing that she needed to find her own path? And now a well-known author and speaker helping others to do this. A lot of great thing about her. She's an author. She's written a book, Live by Your Own Rules, which is something so many people are afraid of, is to live by their own self-rules. Every day you wake up and you know there's something in you saying that I should do this, but you're not quite sure. She would be telling you how. And she'll be talking about how throughout her journey, she's been fortunate to acquire the tools and systems to really help her to make the intensity of their heart and to give back and also help people to receive. Meet my wonderful guest, Kristina, as we share her own journey and also help you on the path to achieve your greatest potential. Well, hello everyone again and welcome to Painless Universal, conversation with myself and Well. As I said in my introduction, today is about talking about the greatest potential. And where does it come from? How do we acquire this? How do we really find what our true potential is and where does it lie? My guest, Kristina, will be telling us just that. She is the co-founder of the Mind Valley that transforms, does this transformation for all ages. She's an entrepreneur, she's a speaker, philanthropist, partner, and a mother. She's been doing this for over 15 years. But before she got into this industry, something happened, and she'll be telling us that journey as we discuss further. Kristina, how are you?
Thank you, I'm good. Thank you for having me. It's a pleasure.
I have to. Anyone who's read your bio, anyone who's gone on the website to research you will understand why I had to have you, because you are so seriously someone that has really created something, especially you and your partner. You guys have done something really exceptional. And for anyone who doesn't know about the Mind Valley, I really encourage you to check it out. It's really an amazing platform that would really transform your ideas and your thinking. Before we get into all of that, can you tell us a little bit about who are you, Kristina?
That's such a, I think it's the most existentialist question in the history of humankind. And I know a lot of very wise people who would have come to the end of their life and still wondering, who am I? What I was doing here? So I could give you so many different answers, but I think the one which comes intuitively to me is that I'm a little girl, which I'm not, biologically speaking. But somewhere deep inside, there is still this little Kristina who's maybe just 7 years old. So I guess that's me. I'm like the little Red Riding Hood trying to find the way through the forest into the grandmother's house.
I honestly, looking at your profile, I would say that. But I know what I know why you say that, because you this transformation, and you're always looking at different, every day is different. You want to keep improving the lives of others. And the way to improve people's life is that you have to transform yourself, and you can't have the consistency with the same method of thinking that you used yesterday. And the pandemic, I think, has taught us all of that. But looking at your life, tell me about your background. What led you on this path?
Yeah, that's a little more easy to answer. So I was born in Soviet Union. It was a while ago. Soviet Union then existed. It's a bizarre country. I usually start with that, and some people suspect there might be a trauma in it. But I think for me, it's just the background to explain a few quirks and weirdnesses about my personality and my story. So I was born in Soviet Union. I was a good girl, studied well, the only child of my parents, did a career super early, perfectionist, striving to excellence. And then at 25, after I had done my career, I ended up marrying and leaving everything behind, because another aspect of my background is that I was brought up on classical literature over the 19th century with fairly strict and dogmatic approach to what is right and what is wrong, and to role models as well. So I thought that's the best I can do, leave everything behind and follow my husband of that time, who was Vishen. We started Mindvalley. He was actually busy doing other things. I had nothing better to do in New York because I had no visa, and people were not sure if I could speak English well enough. So I ended up helping Vishen with Mindvalley. And then I kept searching myself, because I was convinced that my path was actually philanthropy, charity, and solving humanities problems. So I attempted to do a lot of work in non-profit sector, and I even worked for UN. But somehow gradually I came back to Mindvalley and got fully immersed in Mindvalley and in personal growth. It wasn't my conscious choice. It was an accident in many ways. So that's why I guess I said that I'm a searching soul, because it's interesting that so many things have changed over time. I've been a perfect child, a perfect cog in the big machine of Soviet Union. I've been a student, I've been a civil servant, and a person who's worked for NGOs, and an entrepreneur. But with all of those different facets, the only thing that has always been there is trying to figure out what is the thing for me to do. Who am I really? The question you started with, who are you?
Yeah, the question I really started, and you know what, if you ask me that question, I'll be the same. I'll probably not know what to answer, but I don't even think I would say in a simple word is that I'm on a mission to transform the way we deal with pain, the way we view pain. I think that's the only answer in a short form I would say, because it's a very hard question to ask yourself, who are you? But you answered it well. Looking at your bio, for example, you've worked with the government of Estonia, you've worked with the United Nations, Oxfam, and many more. What lessons did you learn from those jobs when you were doing it? Because those jobs are when I think of those kind of jobs, I think about structure, I think about policy, I think about people just having very, very strict ways of doing things. How did that help you along your journey to where you are today?
Well, when I actually worked for the Estonian government, it was surprisingly quite liberal in many aspects, because I ended up working for the government in the early 90s. Actually, not early. I graduated in 96, so in the 90s, early 2000s. And that was fairly soon after Soviet Union collapsed and Estonia became independent. So we actually had this period where a lot of old government servants were dismissed, in the sense that the country, or the new leaders of the country, thought that leaving people who used to be in power, still in power, was dangerous, because there was corruption, there was this, this old mentality. So I remember when I used to work for the government in Estonia, we had a Ministry of Interior, of Defense actually, and a Ministry of Education, and they were both 27-year-olds. So essentially young kids. We also had a prime minister in the early 30s. So it was not as stifling as you could imagine, mostly because we were trying to reinvent ourselves as a country. So that wasn't too bad. I think my breaking point happened when I came to Malaysia. and maybe a little bit in UK when I was trying to work for Oxfam, because I realized that even, and in Malaysia, I worked for an NGO. I worked for an NGO that was working with refugees, with migrant women, and with vulnerable societies. And I was shocked how rigid the system was, because coming as a young person, idealistic and wanting to change the world, it was really painful to realize that you come to an organization which is essentially trying to make a world a better place, yet you have to play by some illogical rules. And in Malaysia, it was particularly painful because the society itself is a little bit more traditional compared to Estonia. And also we didn't have a complete freedom of press there. So especially in certain aspects, like in some aspects it was okay, but when it came to social issues and such unpopular issues as migrant workers, we had to censor ourselves, which was very weird for me. So I think the thing that I learned is that if you are playing in this big world and in the big structure, you have to find this balance between keeping that desire to change the world for the better and keeping that youthful idealism, and not letting the system break you, because sometimes it is the company that is too rigid and too strict. Sometimes it is the issue that you are dealing with which just obstinately refuses to get solved. There are so many ways how the world could be not what you expect or you would want it to be. And as a child or as a young person, you think that if there is a problem, all you need to do is apply the effort and have some passion and some energy to do that. But some things in life take a lifetime to change. And can you keep going when things don't go your way? That's, I guess, the biggest lesson I learned in working in big structures.
Absolutely, it's very true. Can you keep going when things are not your way? Because most of the time, sometimes you have this whole vision of where you want things to go, but it just wouldn't go your way because there are lots of policy to abide by. But you found the courage. You did find the courage to abandon your perfect life and embrace the chaos of finding your own truths. I read that. I'm like, how did you do that? How did you find the courage? Because I think this is a key word, finding courage to do something. How did you do that?
Courage is a good thing, and we need it in many aspects of my of life generally. But when it applies to the specific question that you asked, where I found courage to abandon comfortable life, and I guess you're referring to my fairly recent divorce with a very successful person for apparently no reason. I mean, for the outsiders, they never know the reasons why people do certain things. It was a scary thing, especially that we actually coexisted pretty well. We have children together, and it is a daunting thing to divorce someone incredibly successful and with whom you felt safe and there was not a worry in the world. But in that particular case, it wasn't about courage. In that particular case, it was a little different. I like to compare it to a book, Hobbit, by Tolkien. We just happened to read it with the kids as well. The Lord of the Rings, but the book that was before that. It's about this little guy who gets out of the house totally spontaneously and then ends up on a long journey. And when he comes back, he's not the same Hobbit again anymore. So I guess in my case, this change happened because I just managed to get out of the house. I put the foot out and ended up on a journey, and things changed, but mostly I changed. So sometimes when you change, you can't stick to your old life anymore. And as much as you would like to turn the clock back and go back to the blissful times when before the change, when you were still married, when you were still a student, I don't know, you can't. Even if you did have a time machine and everything did change back to what it was exactly, you can't, because you're a different person. And we often don't realize that. We think, there's this ignorance bliss. We think that, if I could just be back to that time, I would have behaved different. No. So in my case, it wasn't about courage. It was about learning to be honest with myself. And when you learn to be honest with yourself, when you switch on the authenticity, it's not like a light switch which you can go on and off by will. Like, oh, I need to speak, now I'll be authentic. Oh, I need to do this, now I'll switch it off. I don't want to be authentic. It's unfortunately, it's more like a jump with a parachute. Once you're out of the plane door, you, even if you're scared, you can't pack it back into your backpack and return to the plane. You have to make the whole journey. So that was the problem. It was easy to find courage to be honest with myself, but once I was honest, I suddenly realized that I can't do a lot of things that I used to do, because it's just going to be betraying me. So it wasn't about courage. It was more about the situation where I had no choice. I had to do what I had to do, even if it was scary.
Yes, absolutely. And what you've just said is really something a lot of people need to apply to themselves, because we all want things, but sometimes things are never the same again. And I love how you just said you could put the time machine back to where it was before, but I am no longer that person. And it's something a lot of people need to realize. Sometimes you're no longer that person, and it's okay to switch away and find this new person who you truly are. In 2003, when you and your partner co-founded the Mind Valley, right? What was your goal and vision for other people in terms of helping them? I know you might think to yourself, this question doesn't really apply to what we're going through now, but it still applies, because the Mind Valley is quite a relevant institution for many people out there. They still believe that it is a place of hope. What was your goal and vision for both of you when you sat together and said, we want to create this place, this organization that's going to be a transformation organization for all ages?
It's curious, and I hope I don't disappoint anyone, because the answer is much more prosaic than that. So we lived in New York at that time, and Vishen, at that time he was my husband. He had a job because he needed to support us living in New York, and I was not allowed to work, so I was at home trying to do the best I could. So he started he started a site to find people to attend his meditation classes, because he really loved Silva method at that time. He studied it, he used it, it helped him a lot. So he learned to become an instructor in Silva method. It's a method of meditation which you basically use the meditative state of mind to solve certain problems in your life. So it's a little bit more complex than just meditation. So he was an instructor, and he did live classes just to earn extra money, and to get people to the live classes, he started a site which we just happened to name Mind Valley, because this was one of the acceptable domain names which was available. And it started very prosaically. I helped Vishen with that site while I was in New York, because I felt a little stuck, but then I started searching myself. So in the early years, Vishen actually built it with other partners and people. I was there a little bit less than now, but there wasn't a huge, beautiful vision. Of course, there is an ideal in every human's maybe back burner. It's not necessarily, like, sometimes we do things hoping that it's going to lead us to something greater and bigger, but we kind of do them because we need them for a more practical reason. So obviously Vishen always wanted to see the world a better place, and he always believed in sharing techniques that helped him. So it was always there, but it wasn't like a very conscious decision that let's make this education company that will help people to live extraordinary, fulfilled, beautiful lives, and then we started moving in that direction. No, we started moving in a direction, and then as we went along, we found new authors to publish. We found people who were in line with us, and together as a group, the vision was clarified over years. So yes, Mind Valley vision is Mind Valley's parent. I'm a co-parent, so it is his creation, but now, all those years later, it is a creation also of all the other people who are part of it. It is a movement which is bigger than Vishen's ambitions or Vishen's particular vision, even if he is still the essence of the company in many ways. So yeah, that's a little removed from what maybe people thought it could have been.
No. This is totally sweet. I love that, because it's just, I mean, something from pure, something that started so simply. Because a lot of people nowadays, I think they create companies just thinking, oh, I want to be this biggest person out there. But sometimes you just have to create a company believing on what you believe, starting to grow small. And it just happens. And this is such a magical story, which I totally love. On the subject of where does our greatest potential come from? And why does it come from self-acceptance? I think you did a talk about that. Can you just tell us, why does our greatest potential come from self-acceptance?
Well, when it comes to potential, I wonder if I'm actually even the person to speak about potential per se, but if we connect the story of Mindvalley and self-acceptance and the question of potential, a lot of the people, when we go into the world and try to create something, whether it's a company or solve a certain problem or write a book or any kind of creation, anything which is our baby that we care about, we very often aim for the best in the world, which is a great aim, obviously, or the most prominent in that particular field, or making a huge difference. Unfortunately, for most of the people, the reality is a little different. Yes, I also have my show and my interview and like to be huge, but I have my audience and I have my guests, and it is as it is. And you might end up live all your life and make a huge difference to a lot of people in the world, but not end up being the greatest or the biggest or the legendary one. So I think the question, like for me, because I've asked that question myself also quite a lot, I'm an ambitious person. Of course, I'd like to do something massive, but there's always a question of selling your soul to the devil. So when I went on Instagram, for example, of course I wanted to grow my audience, but a lot of the techniques were against my grain. And I wondered, do I want to do that? Because specialists tell me that that's how you grow the audience. Or let's say when I'm writing a book, I'm lucky enough actually to write without a publisher. So nobody tells me that I have to spend the next 50 pages building on my authority. I can do as I wish. But there is always this question, what is more important for you? And I don't want people to misunderstand me. Being loud and noticeable is important in certain areas, because the louder you are, the more ears you reach, the more you can actually make a change. But it is not always a reality, and sometimes it is not a reality for a really long time. So how I like to explain it is, when you're in a deep, dark, long tunnel, and you still don't see the light at the end of the tunnel, what makes you move? Because when you're in a deep, dark, long tunnel, sooner or later, you'll start asking yourself a question. Am I being persistent? And am I being, do I have the grit? Is that what it is? Or am I just being a pig-headed idiot? And I should actually climb out of this tunnel from where I came and find something else. On internet, it's super simple. There is this meme, which I really love to refer to, about the two miners who try to get to the diamonds, and you look at the cross section and it's so clear to you. One of the guys has the grit and he keeps digging, and the other one is an idiot because he turns back right before he reaches the diamonds. But that's a picture on internet. That's not how it is in real life. In real life, you might be in that tunnel for a year, for 2, for 5 years, and still not know where exactly you're going. So how do you make that decision? Are you going in the right direction and you have to keep grinding? Or are you just being an idiot? Because there's another solution where you take a step back and you see a door next to the previous one. There are so many cliches in personal growth. It's ridiculous. Whichever scenario you take, you will get the complete opposites. So, but that's the beauty of life. Nobody has the answer for you. So for me, potential, a human potential lies in that something which helps you keep digging when there is virtually no hope left, and keep going in one direction. So if you keep wondering, should I just climb back out and find another tunnel to dig, then maybe just because you're doubting, just because you don't have that intrinsic motivation to keep going, maybe it isn't your potential. So abstract talk is a little bit maybe hard to understand, so I'll give my personal example just to illustrate it. I actually started work in Mindvalley, and for 15 years I was doing mostly marketing, because I'm quite good at marketing. I still write spectacularly emails, and I was doing that. I enjoyed it, and I was good. I spoke from big stages in the world about how I was doing my email marketing, and I would say that I was one of the top in the world in that particular niche. And then when my journey of self-discovery started, at some point I just slammed the door on everything and went on a sabbatical to look for myself. And just for you to understand, 15 years I did something I was good at, I earned money, we actually built a company. And then at the age of 40, I suddenly thought, I don't want to do that anymore. Somebody else can do that. Somebody else can write emails, maybe not as brilliantly as I do, but they will do. They will do this. They will work and do what they're supposed to do. And I discovered myself in writing, in being more an author writer, not marketing writer, but in writing as an author, in teaching, in speaking from stage, and I didn't have any professional background in that. I'm not a psychologist. I didn't even learn public speaking. But I went there despite not being perfect, and that comes from a perfectionist. I went there first a little bit afraid. And then for those who don't know Mindvalley, just for the context, I get to speak on stage with the best speakers in the world. Because on Mindvalley, we get the best speakers in the world. We get Mark Cuban, Esther Perel, Catherine Woodward-Thomas, Lisa Nichols. We get the best speakers, people who are super famous authors and celebrities and great speakers. So for years, I gave up something where I was acknowledged as probably one of the best in that thing in the world, and started doing something where I had no professional training, and also competing, well, not really competing, but being compared to some of the best in the world. And of course I had doubts and the imposter syndrome. Who am I? What am I doing here with my bizarre accent, with my mistakes in English, because it's my third language? And it was a few years later when I suddenly realized that the message that I have to share and why I'm on stage are so important for me, that all those little things don't matter. And even if I don't have the biggest name, if I haven't written the best-selling book, if I'm not the best author, that's not what makes me valuable. We think that we have a talent and we have to look for that talent. But actually, as one of my friends said, we are multi-talented. And what makes us valuable is the unique combination of what we have, not this one thing. So my imperfection and my story is my value that I take through the world. So my potential lies in something which I will do even when I'm scared, even when I'm not sure, even when it takes so much longer to get out of the tunnel, because I believe in what am I doing.
I love that. I love it. This is just so true. You know, it's something you truly believe in, and with lots of people, we all have imperfection around us, and it's keep going, keep digging, no matter what that imperfection is, if it's something you truly love and adore and believe in. Kristina, you couldn't have said it even better. This is just really, I think that's one of my key highlights from this conversation. But another thing I wanted to ask you is that you learned to create an extraordinary life by making the authenticity of the hearts of our being. And I was like, what does she mean by this? Because it's something you put a lot in everything, in not only your website, your bios. You always talk about learning to create the extraordinary life by making authenticity of our hearts. What do you mean by that?
You know, when it comes to extraordinary life, that's a subjective thing, right? So I guess the quality of life should be judged only by one thing: how much do you enjoy it? There are people who have extraordinary lives and they can't enjoy it. So I would say they have lives which are enviable, but are they extraordinary? That's a different question. And there are people who have very simple lives, but they're extraordinary because they enjoy them. Of course, there is also your impact on the world. And it's easy for us. I guess there's a little bit of a bias. We tend to think that those people who have created something remarkable live extraordinary lives, or their lives is extraordinary because they have done something huge. So that question about extraordinary is a little bit shaky because it's subjective. But when it comes to authenticity, then here I'll give you a seriously unserious answer. So the thing is that I'm leisurely. I used to call myself lazy, but in reality, I'm leisurely. I'm not lazy. And preserving energy is our natural tendency as a human being. Because I just recently read that apparently in the old days, we spent 70% of our energy in trying to find food. So it's our natural tendency to preserve it wherever we don't need to expend it. So you know what I've discovered? Being yourself is the most energy efficient way of living. Because you don't have to pretend. And so the question is not about do you dare to be yourself? The question is, do you see the value in being what you are? Because once you realize that your greatest value is not in being something else, but in what you are, it is so much easier to go with that out into the world. Because if that's what you think you have to give to the world, then you're not going to have to do anything. All you need to do is just be yourself. And as I said, it's the most energy efficient way. And since I like illustrations, I want to refer to a movie so I have children. One of them is a teenager, so my references are very often funny, like Hobbit. The other one comes from X-Men, because it was a lockdown. We've watched actually everything there was to watch. So there is this character in X-Men. Have you watched X-Men?
I have. Yeah.
So there's a brilliant character, Mystique, and she's blue. Her natural form is blue, but in the very beginning, she appears as this blonde girl, like generally quite easily acceptable blonde girl. And then there is this one episode and she's a great fighter. So there's an episode where she's fighting in the form of a blonde girl. And then this another character, Magneto, passes by and casually drops to her. He says, why do you waste all this energy trying to be something else? Just be what you are. You'll fight better. That's essentially what he's trying to say.
Yes.
And I feel that a lot of us do that, especially we women, unfortunately, because we think that we have to be something else to be great. We think that we have to become something else to actually be valuable. And that's where we are making a mistake, because we are like Mystique, trying to put up a form which is unnatural to us and wasting all this energy on something which is not giving any extra value to us, in fact, in what we do, but it's taking up a lot of our energy. So here I want to immediately say that it is not, when you accept yourself for what you are and see that your value is in what you are, it doesn't mean you don't want to become better. But there is a difference in you striving to become better and you keeping or pretending to be something else all the time. There's a huge difference. And it's like with navigation system. When you go somewhere and you have a navigation system, it's not enough to say where you want to go. I want to go to Paris, to, I don't know, Champs-Élysées 33. It's important to say, where do you start from? Navigation system will not tell you how to get to Paris unless the navigation system knows that you're starting from Tallinn, Estonia. So for me, the idea of accepting yourself for what you are is like dropping a pin on your navigation system. And that's when your ability to actually move somewhere else, become something better, is amplified. You're not wasting energy on doing or on pretending, on being something else. You just accept what you are, you acknowledge what you are, you see the value in that, and then you start moving.
I think that's also how we find our own happiness, because when you accept what you are, I think that's how we could start becoming happy with ourselves. And in your words, can you describe how can one truly be happy with themselves? I think it comes with acceptance, what you've just said, but how can it really be?
I believe that there are so many levels. So the simple answer, I'll make a pyramid. I'll first give you a simple answer. The simple answer is just decide. Really decide that it is important for you. This was the first lesson I got in personal growth. Before I got into personal growth, I realized the power of decision. When I moved to Malaysia, I did not enjoy being there. I had lived in New York. I had studied in Edinburgh. I felt thoroughly European, and living in in Asia was very hard for me. And I hated it. And at that time, I was, this arrogant, cynical person. So I saw flaws in everyone and in everything. And then one day when my child was born and he actually learned to walk, and somewhere around that time, and I saw him walking for the first time, it suddenly hit me that he's going to go to school. And most likely I'm going to stay in Malaysia when he goes to school, because I'll have to decide about somewhere to stay when he goes to school. And I suddenly thought, but if that's my home, isn't it stupid that I hate it? It was literally a decision, but this is not something you can intellectualize. You have to come to that when you're ready. So at that time, I was ready to just make a decision. Okay, if that's my home, it makes sense to enjoy it. Mm. So that shift is not even metaphysical. It's actually a very psychological process. I've decided that I'm done hating where I am and hating my home. And by making this decision, I allowed myself to immerse myself fully in the life that I have, well, where I ended up being, and just going for trying to find joy and pleasure in what I was having, and stop being wise and smart and making fun of things which didn't work. And I still saw the problems, but that one decision actually changed the quality of my life massively. So one day I really hated everything. The next day I suddenly was at peace. Yeah. And there was no magic in it. It was just a decision. I was done hating where I lived. It was going to be my home. So why not learn to love it? And it was such a profound lesson. How things change, because my perception changed and my reality started adjusting to the new perception that I adopted. So the same with happiness. If you say that it is important, then you will figure out, because that's what we humans are. We have to prioritize. But the truth about happiness is that in our contemporary society, we don't put enough priority into happiness. If you listen to authors in personal growth, for example, or speeches about happiness, or speeches about other important things in life, a very prominent theme is that happiness is secondary. Find meaning in your life, and then happiness will happen. Or do the right things and happiness will happen. Or my favorite is, as children, we are taught be successful, as if there is an assumption, if you have a good job and you're paid well and you have a family, you'll be happy. There's this assumption. So we, as a society, we put happiness as a secondary thing. And there is even an idea that if you chase happiness, you're never going to get it. So don't chase it. So this is the prominent theme in the public discourse about happiness. And if you ask people around you, what are your goals for 2022? None of them will say, I want to be happy, or happiness is my personal priority or study. They will give you numbers. They will give you something which is presentable, which people are proud to talk about. Yet, if we turn the tables right now and I ask you, what do you wish for the person that you love the most? So even out of this context, mostly will say, I want my children, my partner, my lover, my parents to be happy. We want them to be happy. Even if it doesn't depend on us, we want them to be happy. That's why we wish each other happy birthday, many happy returns. Happy is there. So there is happy on one side, it's important. And on the other side, it is not important. And so I can go very deep into that conversation. So my main message is that we have to prioritize it. It isn't unimportant. It is important. Research shows that, yes, your level of success is not any predictor of your level of happiness. But if you're happy, you're much more likely to be successful, because happiness is that state which gives you more resource, which helps you to actually achieve more. So just to finish up this whole thing, in personal growth, we understand that if you want to achieve anything, you have to work on that. You want health, work on your health. You want good relationships, work on your relationships. You want to be a good parent, you have to study and learn how to be a good parent. You want a business, obviously you have to work on your business, right? Yet, if you want to be happy, it's just going to happen to you. Out of the blue.
Kristina, you said it right, because we don't prioritize happiness. We just think it should happen automatically to us. Whatever we're doing, it should happen. but not realizing happiness is you really said it well. It's a perspective. It's the way your mind shifts. When you shift the way you think, the way you analyze, the way you see the world, that happiness comes back to you. On my final question, you're an author. You wrote the book, Live by Your Own Rules. A book that is really designed for transformation movement to help one identify their own who they truly are. And you said 30 days. Can you tell us a little bit about your book and why you decided to put pens to paper? Because that is a difficult thing for many people to achieve, but you decided to do it. And what lessons can we learn from your book?
So the one which is ready is actually my course, which I'm on video there, which is a much easier format for me, apparently. And the book, I'm just about to finish the manuscript, and it's going to be different from my course.
Okay.
Obviously, but the course is it's such a funny thing, because I actually wrote it first a few years ago by suggestion of my business mentor. He said, you're in personal growth, you're entrepreneur in personal growth, you have to have your own course, you have to write your own book, you have to be, it's what so many of us do. They're like, you have to do that. So why are you writing a book? Because I have a mission. But actually, if you go deep inside, why? Because everybody writes a book. That's the business model. And that's the problem. So that's how I wrote my first program, Live by Your Own Rules. It was maybe 4 or 5 years ago now, and there was one chapter which actually gave me birthed me as an author. That was a chapter about happiness, but the rest of it I abandoned because after I wrote this first version, I went through my own huge midlife crisis, I would believe, because it happened at 40, and it ended up in me changing my career dramatically and divorcing. So I guess I can call it now midlife crisis. So the new version of it happened later, and that was when I, as an author, matured and my message matured. So if the first one I wrote because it was the wise thing to do for business, and it was a good thing. I mean, I'm a perfectionist. I'm a straight A student. Obviously, it was a good thing, but it wasn't genius and it wasn't brilliant. It was just good, because I was regurgitating. Being in personal growth, by then I was maybe 15 years. Of course, I could give a lot of wise things. But it was later when I went through my own transformation, through my own scary moments, and my message came through me, where when I was on stage, I had to share things even if I didn't want, because I felt that I had to do that. It was I was compelled. It wasn't in my power. I didn't have the right to keep it to myself. That's when my message matured. And when my message matured, I did a new version, a new reiteration of Live by Your Own Rules, and now I'm doing the third one. And why Live by Your Own Rules? Because that's my journey. And I was wondering today as well, whether I like it or not, but this is the biggest value that I can give, my own path back to me, giving up all those social roles and expectations, what I think the society wants me to be. I'm the only child of my parents. I was born and raised in Soviet Union. So this idea of perfectionism, of being the role model, it was so ingrained in me, and I struggled with that. It was only when I allowed myself, when I told myself, it's okay. I can be a broken, flawed human being, flawsome, as I like to say. It's fine. I don't have to be perfect. That's when my life actually started, and that was just a few years back. And because that was my own journey, when I finally accepted myself with all my dragons, dents, scratches, everything which is so imperfect about me, and I realized that this is where my value is, that's when I actually started feeling that I'm living for a reason, that I enjoy everything that I'm doing, even if it's sometimes hard and unpleasant. I still enjoy it in a funny way. And that's why I had to share it. That's what it's about. I'm not unlike all the other authors in Mindvalley, I don't promise you a happy life, even though happiness is my important goal. What I promise you is that when you are at peace with yourself, and you don't have to lie to yourself, and you don't have to pretend, and you can just be you. I do not know if it will be happy or meaningful, fulfilling, but it will be enjoyable. And that's the most important part.
I agree. I think it's very much so, because when you find who you truly are, when you begin to accept all your flaws, It doesn't matter what you are. It could be your race, it could be your gender, it could be whatever. But when you take that moment to accept who you are, you start to find your own joy. And it's that thing that I had to reach out to you, Kristina, to talk to you about, because I think you have done a marvelous job and you're still doing so much great work to help other people out there, to really help them on that path, to understand the meaning of what is it truly that we want out of life, to define that life and help us to go on that horrible, difficult journey. But what I love about you is that you're there to hold our hands as we go through this difficult path, and you're not ashamed to hide anything, to edit it, but you tell it as it is for people truly to understand it can be done. That sometimes you just have to find your own discipline, your own toughness, and make it happen. I really thank you for your time. And is there any final message you need to add before we get to the roundup for today?
Thank you, Anne, for having me. Can I just share one of my favorite stories, because
Yeah.
I'm on a mission, actually. So it was almost 10 years ago when we were still building Mind Valley, which is about living happy, fulfilled, extraordinary lives. And I still, at that time, worked with the refugees in Malaysia, and I saw a lot of tragedy. So as any conscious, good human being, the good girl, it was a huge conflict inside of me. I understand that happiness is important, but there is all this tragedy in the world. So how can I be happy when I work with the people who are unhappy? And we had a little audience with at one of the events with Dalai Lama where he was speaking, and I had a chance to ask that question of him. He listened to me and he said, Kristina, you can't help anyone if you're not happy. And for me, it was a permission to actually prioritize my happiness above all. When you prioritize your happiness, it doesn't mean that you cannot leave a meaningful footprint on this planet, right? You can still help other people, but you can't help them if you're not happy. So I like to finish with that story, because you see, if Dalai Lama gave me permission to be happy, then I want to pass it to everyone who's listening. You have the right to be happy. In fact, I think that's the best you can give to the world, to be you and to enjoy you as you are.